today. Today's a little bit atypical. We're going to have a lot of lectures today. We're going to have 2 lectures today, so back to back. We're very fortunate today to have Ariadna Perich with us from Barcelona. I'm going to read her introduction to me from my phone because it was delivered a bit late, but so bear with me if I'm reading from my phone and it dies. Just to say, we have these 2 back-to-back lectures. One, the typical Friday 12 o'clock conventional practice lecture, and then at 2 o'clock today, so 2 hours from now, we're going to have the kind of major lecture that was scheduled for Wednesday, which had to be rescheduled due to weather in the Northeast, as you guys are all familiar with the inclement weather that we had in the Northeast U.S. So, without further ado, let me introduce Ariadna. Ariadna Perich is an architect and assistant dean for cultural activities at atETSAB-UPC, Escola Tècnica Superior de Arquitectura de Barcelona, Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya. Is that good?
Very good.
Very good. Where she teaches design studios, oversees cultural programming, organizes conferences, and curates exhibitions. She has been guest tutor at the University of Edinburgh School of Arts, Culture, and Environment, IED, Barcelona, UIC, SARC, and the Engenharia e dell'Architettura at the University of Pisa, Italy. Correct? Since 2011, she is a member of the research group FORM. She has published in San Rocco, Being in Between, and Toyo Ito's Sendai Media Tech, Norms and the Transgression of an Architectural System, number 4 and number 8. In DPA, Those Secretly Necessary Things, the Amsterdam Municipal Orphanage from Alovenek, number 2728. Most recently, in Palimpsesto. Please choose hardcover when possible. Thank you, number 11. This is an interesting bio. On the exhibition, Elements of Architecture at the 14th International Architecture Biennale in Venice. She won first prize in the Barcelona City Council's 2-stage competition, The Gates of Collserola, July 2012. In December 2012, she was selected to work on design proposals for Parallel Avenue, Barcelona's Broadway, December 2012. So I'm going to stop there and hand it over to Ariadna. As always, what we're trying to promote here, what we're trying to set up is a dialogue, right? So we're going to present the work. I think this work is going to be super interesting, and I think it's going to be very new for our students to see this kind of work framed in the way that just after 5 minutes of conversation with Ariadna, I can imagine it's going to be framed. It's very exciting. So think about questions or comments or debate that we might have at the end of the lecture. Okay. With that, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. First of all, I would like to say thank yous to Tristan and Mark over there, and also Richard Dagentart to invite me here. It's really a pleasure for me to be here. It's my first time in Atlanta and also in the US. I experienced very interesting things like a monster and storm in New York, so I think I will come back very soon. I titled this lecture, Architectural Practice, Post-Crisis, Anecdotes and Postcards from Spain. As you will see later, the lecture is divided in 2 parts. The beginning, I try to frame the context where I started my studies of architecture, and I am trying to develop my career. As you maybe will be aware, or you are aware, if not, I will try to give you some images of it. The situation, economical situation in Spain, it has been changed a lot during the last 10 years, and that's something that really defines the way we perform our profession as architects. Just to start, I started my career in '96. I am from a very small town up north in Catalonia, and I moved towards Barcelona, where the architectural school was at the time. Now, during the last 20 years, they open a lot of other schools around the country, but at the moment, that was the only way to study the career. When I was there, of course, I found a city that, if you maybe know it, have you been? How many of you have you been to Barcelona? Okay, quite good. It's a city that here I call it. There is this quote from this Catalan writer that he says Barcelona is a nervous city. It's a city that it's somehow keeps transforming itself, and we could say that it's very. It's like a person that it's never satisfied with how she is. That makes it a very vibrant city, but a city that also has these confrontations with the remains of the past. It's also a very compact city that has to deal with a very limited territorial space, and that forced to regenerate within its boundaries. So it's quite, as I encourage you to follow, it's a very interesting city, especially for architects and urban planners, to follow the story behind it. It's a city that, as I said, it's nervous. And it also has some kind of special characteristic, I think, that it has been a city that has held several international events. And as you may know, the Olympic Games were in 1992, but it all started already in 1888 with the Universal Exposition. The city uses these events in order to transform and develop certain neglected areas of the city. So we could say it's an event city that uses this kind of or creates, sometimes fakely creates these events in order to improve the conditions of the city and regenerate itself. That, of course, for architects, it means work. It means that there is a space for design, urban planning, and also building sites. When I started the career, it was 96, and it was after Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were already planned at the end of the 80s, and they meant really a lot for the city, a total transformation. The city suddenly opened up itself to the sea, which before it wasn't, like you could see in the previous image. And as you can imagine, after 92, when everything just happened and there was a lot of housing construction built, there was a moment of decay. Architects, when I talk with architects, they are now in their 60s and 70s, this generation of architects, they say to me, oh, come on, you are in crisis now, but we also were in crisis in the 90s after the Olympic Games. And maybe for their perspective, it's true, but the context was very different. We are now, as I can tell you, there is a lot of schools of architecture. That means a lot of architects in Spain. At that time, in the 90s, there were not so many. So maybe their perspective of crisis is different of the one we have now. In any case, it's interesting that I started my career in times of crisis, and I finish it again in times of crisis. So. Not a very good choice. This is a picture of the School of Barcelona, where I study. It's one of the oldest from Spain. It has a long-standing tradition of a very well-renowned international architects have been there. It's a school that had several locations in the city. This is the final stage with also an addition by, as you can see, this red, curvy, very sensual building is an extension did by Coder, a Catalan architect. As I told you, there is some names that maybe you will know. I just pointed out architects like Antoni Gaudí, with this. This is a house that he did in 1904. It's one of the, we could say, alumni from our school. Antonio Bonet Castellana also with this. This is an example of one domestic house close to Barcelona airport, made in the sea in the 50s. And then finally, for example, it's maybe you also know Enric Miralles and Benedetta Tagliabue. Miralles died in 2000 with this house made in the 96. These are all alumni from the school where I attended, and especially this is just, I selected 3 architects that maybe they are a bit formalist, the school has also another side that maybe you will see. I think the school, now that I have some perspective as an ex-student and teacher and now member of the direction, I could say that the School of Barcelona, if there is a definition, it's a school that has, how to say, we really encourage our students, and they really, I got my teachers, no? They forced me to really look, to pay a lot of attention and very carefully attention to the site. And we are design orientated. Most of the subjects have a design exercises within. And they are all based somehow reality based. No? It's like we try to reproduce in a smaller scale what it could be a normal project outside. What you are seeing here, it's drawings by students of mine from the recent years. This is, we could say, like it's a site plan from this small town where we did 5 small interventions during one year. And it's a drawing made by computer, which maybe you could say it looks like made by hand, because I think the school has also a tradition of encouraging the students to never lose the touch of drawing by hand and trying to to keep this texture on their drawings. So carefully we really have closer look at the site where we design. The school also has I think we could say the way we design, it's very the projects, they all have like a polyhedric shape. They all have different scales in one. We always take in account at the same time the wider area where they are located, and the projects where they are inserted, they are all inserted in a specific place, and they could never be taken out without transforming this site. So projects are made to transform the sites, but at the same time inherit their characteristics. No? So it's a kind of a blending situation. This is an axonometry made by also one of my ex-students, where you can see there is the representation of the specific site, and also at the same time a very, very strong concern about the structural characteristics of the proposal. So there is in the same exercise, in the same architectural objects, they take in account the place where they are. They take in account also very much from the beginning aspects like materiality and technical issues. We are also a school that we are embedded in the Polytechnic school. That means that we are next to the engineering school. There is other architectural schools in Europe that are together with Beaux-Arts, like art colleges. We are not. We're more in the technical, but at the same time, we never lose certain classes, like we have history, we also had philosophy and aesthetics, we also have composition, and so I think we are well known to be the most humanistic techniques from the Polytechnic school, and this kind of reflects, I think, as a whole in the way we design and the way the students approach the projects. Then in 2005, it took me 9 years to do my degree. It doesn't mean I fail a lot. I actually pass every year. But because there is, as in my time, there was a lot, when I was studying, there was work. So students, it was very easy for us to work in the offices that they had a lot of work outside. So when I finished after 5 years, before to take my final project, I actually spent some time working in some offices. I already started working when I was in third year. So I combined studies and working practices in some offices. Then I did 1 year abroad in the Erasmus program. I was in Scotland for 1 year. So somehow there was no urgency for me to finish my career or to have a license to build, because I was already practicing within other offices and having a full experience on that. But finally I presented my final project in 2005, and maybe just to give you, I think that it's different from you here. Universities in Spain, when we do the final project, we have the license to build. We don't need to do other exams or other tests with other unions. We finish the career and we can build. The only thing we have to do is to register in the Union College of Architects and pay several money every 3 months, and that's it. So we are fully ready to build. So after 2005, I was capable of it, but then what happens is that because I was already involved in a lot of activities in the school, and some tutors, they knew me, so I had the opportunity, or there was a possibility for me to start as a teacher, as a part-time teacher. So I stayed, and then I start teaching in first and second year, and I've been teaching since then in these first stages of the career, which I think the students are the best students in first and second year, because they are still a bit innocent but willing to learn, but they already know how hard it is, the career. I'm sure you will find out. So it's very nice to see the students grow, no, during 1 year. So that's when I started, 2005. As I told you before, 2005 was 2 years later. We had that was the peak. 2005 and 6, it was the peak of the wealthy and for not only for architects but also Spanish economy was in its high. There was few unemployment, and everybody was working and getting along, and architects had a lot of work. There was a lot of housing built, and then it all crashed in 2007. So there was this huge bubble on construction and also in economy, because Spain had somehow the economy was based a lot in construction mainly. So as a result of the bubble, one of the sectors that was more harmed, it was the construction, but of course architects. Then that was the situation. I didn't somehow, because it took me so long to finish my degree, I didn't have time to get into this wave of high construction and really getting a lot of things done. But instead I started teaching part-time. So that was 2007 when everything started collapsing, no? And that somehow, I think, even now we are still in this new reality. Spain wake up one day and realize that there was too many houses built, that there was a lot of constructions just half finished because the money ran out in the middle. A lot of damage was made especially in the coast areas, because it was where mainly certain the activity was going on, but also I think it was everywhere in Spain. Everybody jumped into this craziness of construction to get, and also people, as you can see on the right, the banks were really giving very easy the money. This here also happens here in the States, with the difference that here I think when you cannot pay your mortgage, you just leave your house and go somewhere else. In Spain, they force you to leave your house, but still you have to pay what you owe, the debt. So it's a very huge problem now. A lot of Spanish people, they don't live in their houses because they lost the houses because they cannot pay the mortgage. Unemployment, as you know, maybe it's more than 20%. We are really 24% of our population is unemployed. So it's a very critical and I think chronic, endemic unemployment, which even though when you are there, things are still moving and you don't perceive a lot of this, so that it means that there is maybe a lot of black economy going on with people surviving. It cannot be that suddenly 4 or 5 million of people in Spain, they don't have unemployment and there is not a revolution, so something is going on. But this bubble of construction generates this paradox. There is a lot of empty houses because people cannot pay for them, so the banks own their houses. There is empty houses that have never been inhabited. And at the same time, every day there is people that goes outside to the street because they cannot, and without a house. So it is a very strange and all at the same time hurtful paradox. No, we have empty houses for everybody, but no, and at the same time a lot of people without them. If we keep in the sector, no, so what architects do now? Because, as I said, there is statistics that say that maybe 50% of architects are unemployed. We are a lot, and there is no building construction at all. I mean, building construction after 2007 dropped down more than 70–80%, and in some areas even 90%. That means we went from a lot to nothing in very short time. And that forced, of course, architects to take different paths. Most of them, especially the recent graduates, they are leaving, and they are coming here, South America. They are going to China, Korea, other parts of Europe. I mean, I know cases of ex-students of mine that they are everywhere. But then we are maybe the generation that we try to survive. We are too old to leave and too young to have an established office, so we kind of survive in weird ways, as you will see. But at the same time, maybe it's interesting because it forces us to reinvent and to find windows of to be more entrepreneurs in certain things that maybe if the situation was better, we could have not done. I will present you, for example, this is a photography project of 3 architects from La Coruña. One is a friend of mine, and in 2012, another one is specialized in photography. They did this project called Spanish Dream. Of course, the quote is from American Dream, the Spanish Dream. And the Spanish Dream in 2012, it's this. It's empty houses, unfinished houses, and it's very nice. What they did, it was they stage, they temporarily inhabit for the photo, these ruins, no? So they generate this very interesting contrast, and they were even exhibited. They started for very close reasons. It was a way, they told me, it was a way to kind of express our frustration about what was going on. I mean, everything around us, it was collapsing, but we are still architects. We can serve the society, and we need to be critical about what happened. No? So they did this very nice project that was inhabited in the Tate Modern in London. Situations like that, no? The neighbor is in a perfect house living, and then that your house is unfinished. You get in, you go shopping, no? And you say hi to your neighbor. That's the reality in Spain now. There is very different realities collapsing, co-inhabiting it next to each other. This, for example, this is a very Galicia, northwest of Spain landscape. You can see in the back. No, there's also this imposition of these infrastructures that have half finished, these modern ruins in front of the existing tissues. No? This is a normal Christmas setting in a house. No? Or these other images. All, of course, very powerful, and they just appeal to the sensitivity of a kid in a room that cannot even move, or somebody sleeping in an unfinished house. Just moments, very precise moments of expressing this dramatic situation. Of course, this again, not only the level of we even called. They are starting to appear and to get architects to get interested in this landscape of post-crisis, a landscape that it's mainly conformed by they call ghost urbanizations, like huge housing projects that are they meant to hold thousands of people, but maybe there is only 2 or 3 people living without services, and when they were built, they promised a new way of life. They promised, a lot of happiness to people, and a lot of Spanish people, they felt for it. They said, okay, that's my time. I can buy a house, I can be in this idyllical place, close to the beach, with a new flat, with new roads, new facilities. But then now there is also a situation where there is some people living in spaces which are half built. And there is several documentaries about it, which I encourage you to look at them also. No? So these new landscapes of Spain, mostly in the coast area, which is where it was more affected. New flats that they cannot sell, flats that they, for example, the original price was 250,000 euros, and now they are selling them for 60,000. So it could happen a situation where you buy a house for 60,000 now, and then the neighbor bought it for 240, which is crazy. It's the same house, it's the same, but because of the crisis, they are really selling them like nothing. This again, this architect, this German architect based in Barcelona called Julia Schulz-Dornburg, she did this beautiful book also capturing these modern rooms. She called it like una topografía de lucro, which is like a topography of leisure. Which is very perverse, because we kind of get mesmerized and seduce architects by this. This is an image of failure, not only by politicians that order and that they allow this to happen, and constructors and developers to do. This is a landscape that has been permanently changed and transformed, because maybe, as you know here, demolition is not something that nobody considers in Spain, which is strange. We should demolish. But maybe the cost of demolish is just more than keeping it like that. So some architects also are being seduced by these new landscapes. I guess in a way to find out what can we do about them. What we do with these new territories is this spaces where we can still work? Is this our future? Is this the places that we will have to do interventions in the future? Is it something we will be able to transform or to? So it's somehow a critical look, but at the same time propositive look on these landscapes. And then you have photos like that, where nature hopefully it's starting to take over, all this, and eventually will cover them. Okay, this situation post-crisis, as I told you before, forced architects to rethink and the way they practice. This is a magazine, a Spanish magazine called Arquitectura Viva. It's quite a well-known magazine, and everybody was waiting for this number. It was quite in 2012, so it's like 5 years already in crisis, in the permanent crisis, which is the new reality, let's say it like that. I'm totally convinced that what we are living now in a space, it's the new reality. It's not something that will change or come back like it was before. It's never going to be like it was before. It's impossible. There is so much things that has been done. We cannot just build on top of them, or So this is the new reality, and the new reality forces architects to gather together. For example, in a shape of collective, we say colectivos españoles, like new ways of working. Redes, like grids and platforms, where they somehow, by joining them together, they are able to join different expertise and get to a wider spectrum of jobs. As an example, I brought two of these collective offices. One is La Col. They are based in Barcelona, and a definition. What are they? Why are they special? Maybe, or they are an example of what architects can do now. They have their office in a very small neighborhood in Barcelona, and what they do is they really work close with the neighbors. They really get their problems, and they really make a difference in the exactly close location where they are. So it's a kind of a proximity. We know architects went back to the ground, and then we get again the proximity with the people to be really, in service of the social tissues that we have around. And they deal, that's how they present themselves in the website. They have the participation, which means that they help in process of dialoguing between governmental institutions and citizens. Architects, we can be very good in helping these dialogues happening in order to make transformations of neighborhoods and city better. They also help, they do self-construction, and they do regular architect jobs. They can do new buildings, restoration, and be like very technical, that's a kind of, these collectives, of course, they have a kind of assemblearial way of functioning. They have meetings very often, and where they discuss things. And then this is also a very nice project from this girl called Carla. She's together with these architects. Every time that they meet, she just goes there and tries to draw this process of dialoguing, and so there is being registered. This kind of new way of, as you can see, maybe very fast. It's not to go into it, but local, global. They play with words, and they try to find, okay, how can we make a difference? How can we help? How can we, even though the economy is not there, even though money is not there, but things still need to happen. The city has still a space and gaps to improve, and citizens can be they can be active participators on that. And architects, especially them, for example, they really go alongside with them and became somehow a bit political, which is something that we forgot for a long time. We were just servants for the politicians, but now we can be again active politics in our way, because architecture is also a lot about that, and we kind of forgot. Other collectives, for example, this is called the Red Balloon, and they are architects, but what they do is they try to explain architecture to kids, to small children, and they also do itinerarium, tourist itinerarium, but very. But in a very formal way, because to people who are interested in discovering modern buildings in the city of Barcelona, and they specialized on that, and they do very interesting jobs to educate the new generations of citizens about what architects can be and what they can do for the city themselves, together with architects. Architecture is not something that should be separated, or it's something that is really embedded in our way of being, and it should be something normal for small kids to have an education also on architects, that they can respect the profession and they can respect what the job we do, and the fact that we are useful somehow. They make an effort to be able to reconnect with society through the teaching process. Of course, another consequence of the crisis is that there is no more hospitals to do, there is no more schools, no more Palace of Congress, no more museums, no more, everything has been done, and too many, too much, too big. So what is left? Too small things. So it's a kind of, I find it a bit cynical, when this kind of magazine, this is a very established magazine made by this generation that never had any problem in their lives. So what they call small Spain reinventing practice is okay, we don't choose to do small Spain. It's the only thing that is left. So it's very funny when they just, So architects now, they do, of course, a lot of small jobs, but we are still, hunger, for creativity and design. And this is very good because, any job we have, we can really explore it in the maximum consequences, and in a very creative way. This is, for example, an office based in Barcelona called Arquitectura G, that's up there, and they had a commission to do tourist apartments, to restore some apartments in Barcelona for tourism. And what they did, it was several of them in the same building. They designed this kind of object that had everything in one, no? Like a bed, a stair, like different levels of things. And as you can see, it's a very sophisticated, not very expensive intervention at all, but very sophisticated and quite well designed. And it's something that this attitude towards the reality, the reality is there, and we don't have a lot of money to touch it to make it very clean, very pretty. But our intervention is strong enough, and it's quite, interesting enough to turn everything around. So the new and the old, they dialogue, and this is quite something that it's going on now. Architects also, like them, for example, they start expressing their creativity in other fields. In Catalonia, there has been a tradition of architects to also be very good designers. Of course, Barcelona it's the capital of design. So architects, now that they cannot build anymore too much, we are getting back to design furniture, and design other stuff. There is a lot of architects that they change, and they, for example, I know several that they are now shoes designers, or they design bicycles. Everybody took their desires and their fantasies, and they are just making them happen, because they have the time. Small stuff, so houses with low budgets, where they, this is another young firm, Anna is a couple, Anna and Eugeni Bach, where they did this house with very, very small resources, but as you can see, with a very precise use of materials, with trying to create with very local and very somehow not expensive materials, but very well designed and ensembled to create as much as you can from this every space. Or these other architects called Peristyle, which they just recently finished. This is just an earlier construction. Now, for example, the council is really doing a lot of interventions, but they are not permanent interventions. They are called temporary micro-urbanization projects, and this is a temporary pavilion that is staged in a huge renovation area in Barcelona. And these architects, these friends of mine, they just, of course, they have a budget. It's not too much, but they have it. But then this temporary condition, together with low budget, somehow allows this space of exploration, experimentation in terms of design by using this kind of temporary metal structures and these meshes that they wrap around, exploring new space according to this temporary condition. Other architects, as I told you, this is a girl, maybe you know it. She started with me in my first year, and she's now, for the last 4 years, she's the new director of the Stormfront Gallery in New York. So architects that don't build, but they went abroad, and they are being selected abroad to curate, direct, and create somehow theoretical knowledge in these kind of institutions. Eva Frank is now there, and she also, the Storefront Gallery also did the last American pavilion in the Venice Biennale, Architectural Biennale, or something very, very recent, this group of Spanish curators and scholars that they are from Spain, that they are based in New York. They recently won the competition for the curator of the Oslo Triennale, with this project called After Belonging. So Spanish architects that are not in Spain are still, and some of them that they left are still spreading and somehow exercising their knowledge and their theoretical improvements in outside the country. But always with somehow a foot based on their origins. That leads me to the second part of the lecture, and I'm sorry if I'm being a bit fast or maybe too slow. You can ask me questions later. This is going to be just a row of personal work, my experience. Because of the last two images, I decided to start with my my job as one of my several jobs as assistant dean for cultural activities in my school. This image is, this actually is from Rotterdam, but you will see why I choose it. So in 2013, the director of the school at the moment asked me if I wanted to be the assistant dean for cultural activities. Normally I am a part-time teacher. I teach 6 hours a week only, and the rest of the time I do my personal work, professional practice, and then now I deal also with the cultural activity, what it means to be the assistant dean. So the first thing I found, it was that there was not a cultural department in my school. It didn't exist like as a name or as an entity that you could, we were actually, our office was in front of a toilet at the end of a corridor in the directions corridor. No, it was actually that. So people knew we were there because they went to the toilet. So what I decided, and of course the students didn't know that we existed at all. So the first thing I decided was, okay, and it goes along with my way of being somehow as an architect and as a teacher. I said, okay, the first thing we need to do is to create culture. So something that is recognizable. So I did like a branding. I was being, I don't know, marketing, you know. And I said, okay, let's do some branding here. We did the logo. It was a bit pretentious. It took me a while to decide, but then I thought, yeah, who cares? Let's call ourselves Cult, you know, which it can have several meanings, and I'm okay with it. It's also a cult cultura. You can read it whatever you want, but it gives us a logo and a name, and we can start from here. Then we didn't have any, I opened all the social media profiles, Facebooks, Twitters and stuff, because our website is terrible. Please don't go in until yeah, maybe a few months, because we're in the process of changing it. But you can go in that, so you can see the before and after. But our school website is a bit, yeah, also in terms of design, and it's a machine of administration, but it's not really appealing or seducing to anybody to come. I recommend you to come, but not the website. So as you can see, there is a certain style, taking care of the design, make sure that everything we do has a dignity, and it has yeah, maybe a texture that it's recognizable by students and everybody, that we are there and we do things. No? So we did this agenda, like every month we kind of select and ask, because a lot of things are going on in our university that nobody knows. I don't know if it happens the same here. We are a big university, and then sometimes some huge architect that everybody should know came, and nobody, and yeah, he came, he did a lecture there in a corner, and nobody knew. No? So we try to make publicity of what we do and also be proactive. This is this is an open page. You can visit and see what we have done. The Twitter, and then the other thing I did. Okay, we are in front of the toilet. That needs to stop. I said where we have to be. Cultura has to be in the public realm of the school. We want the students to see us. We want the students to pass next to us. We want the students to confront us. We want to be part of the life of the school. So I decided to move. I asked the director. He said, at the beginning he said no, because that meant that we would go outside the direction team. But then he agreed, and then we went down into the basement of the building, which is the entrance where the hall is, and we have a small office, and we are really next to the exhibition spaces of the school. We also did a party to open it up, and yeah, so we are now in a very well location in the school. We have a logo, we are ourselves, and we start doing things. What is my job? My job is to organize conferences, to organize a series of events. Here, for example, is this moment where, at the beginning, where we did this 5 positions sequence of conference with people like Juhani Pallasma or even Jaume Plensa. Maybe you know him. He's an artist that has a lot of works in United States. He's from Barcelona. Or other things, for example, it's quite common to celebrate this centenarium of well-known architects, especially in Catalonia. Catalan architects that have 100 years that they died, so we do, we kind of try to give an approach to their work for the students, because, I mean, some of these architects, maybe they are not really well known for all the students, so we kind of bring it up again, and rediscover their work. I also organize this thing called sobre taules, which is like, in Catalan it means, when you have lunch and then afterwards you talk in the table, and most of them, most interesting conversations always happen when it's in these moments of informality and with a coffee and with a stomach very full, so like you today. So that's what I call this sobre taules, and what we did, we took furniture from the director's office. He was not very happy, but it was the best furniture we have in the school, so I wasn't going to renounce to that. We had this beautiful lamp from this Catalan architect and designer, Correa, and this table. I put a plan, and then we just moved this kind of temporary stage along the school in different positions, and we suddenly create debates. We sit down. I located 4 people around, and then that was open in the middle of the school, and everybody could attend to it, and it was quite nice. Not very crowded, because, as I was telling before to Tristan, it's very difficult to attract the attention and seduce you, students. It's very hard for us. Maybe I will use the food technique. It really helps. Food and drinks really helps. So I will try this when I'm back. So that was one of this kind of, somehow to try to use the school in a very domestic way, which, and making our appearances around so people get used to us. Exhibitions, about a lot of attention to photography. Architects, a lot of architects are now shifting also in being photographers. It's part of our profession and part of our education. We need to be good photographers. We need to be able to capture the reality in a very proactive way. So a lot of architects now. I mean, there is this friend of mine who has as much as followers in Instagram as any huge foot player in Spain. He's very good, Nicanor Garcia. He's also a teacher in the school. I mean, he's there, and he has maybe nearly 1 million followers in Instagram. And then we organize exhibitions that are already made, that I kind of pick them up and say, okay, let's come to the school and exhibit you, or exhibitions that we make ourselves, not the concept and also the stage. Of course, this with very limited resources. I'm going to tell you how much money culture have every year, 6,000 euros, which is, I don't know in dollars, but the most $6,000 for 1 year. So as you can imagine, everything that is here, it's strange. IKEA, we spend a lot of hours doing ourselves everything, but eventually it makes it's nice when things come through and the effort is there. It's also a way of being, when you have little money and you manage to pull through great ideas, the rewarding it's also higher. Exhibitions like these, final projects exhibitions. Our exhibition space, we don't have a room. It's a corridor, so it's a bit strange and also at the same time provocative, because it's where the students pass by. Also, we cannot exhibit very delicate and expensive things, but it's very nice because they really integrated. Every student pass by eventually to there. Small exhibitions in some other spaces. Photography of architect, and this is the last one which I reused. These are just this furniture. I don't know if you have them here. It's just these big drawers for big drawing, And this is furniture that it was going to be in the trash, and I kind of, okay, no, let's keep it and let's use it for maybe a possible exhibition, and that was what I did the last time. Along to that, of course, I am a teacher. I am a curator of exhibitions, I design exhibitions, and then of course, because I'm an academic, I try to write articles eventually. These are 3 magazines which I wrote. Tristan already said some before. This is this Italian magazine called San Rocco, which is, I recommend you to have a look, very nice. This one is a magazine, the middle one is a magazine from the school, from the design department, and the third one is also from the design department. What I'm interested in, so of course, things that are related to my teaching practice and also personal things. This is something that it's a lecture that I do every year in my class related to our program. And then this was they asked me to write about the Amsterdam Orphanage from Aldo van Eyck, that it's a very, very good, if you don't know, a mud building, like a building that expands, and it's a kind of a iconical building from its type in Amsterdam. And I did, the way I work is, I'm not a very good theoretical person. I do research by design, and I really use drawing as a technique. Somehow drawings make me think, so sometimes what it happens, like I first draw and then write, or I need to redraw the stuff I have to talk to about it. So I create these very nice non-existing drawings from this building, which allow me to talk about the building in a different way. And this is the last article I wrote. It's called Please Choose Hardcover When Possible, Thank You. It's about the exhibition elements in the last, as you know, every 2 years there is an international architectural exhibition in Venice. This year it was curated by Rem Koolhaas, and it was called Fundamentals. So I was there as a press for when the inauguration took place. Crazy experience, and then when I came back, I kind of felt like there was some things that I needed to say, and I had this opportunity. It's in Spanish, but basically I got into this file from Rem because Rem Koolhaas, in the exhibition of elements, he selected some books, some treatises, and I wanted to have this list, and I didn't find it with me, and then I kind of contacted by mail to these people in the Biennale, and then they sent me this amazing working file, an Excel file, directly from OMA, and I was like, what? I have this, like, so I make this, and there was one of the columns that said, please, if you find, it was like an order from OMA to these books, if you find it. So I thought it was interesting to say, okay, books were important from this exhibition more than the exhibition itself, and that's what it talks about. But it's of course, then I tried to go to some congress in order to keep, also the academical track. This is something I'm interested in, which is called visual essays. It's a research. I don't know if it has the shape of PhD, I don't think so, but it's a small research I did about how architects, they use these kind of drawings in order to, as a critical method, to work and develop their ideas. Well, no, I cannot go further, but this is the kind of texture of what I've done. And now, finally, I will show you some of the projects, some built, mostly unbuilt, because they were like studies, previous studies, and some others, they got cut also in the crisis. This is a small project. We did 2 weeks project in this school, private school in Barcelona, where the students of all years, during 2 weeks, they have to design and build something. And this was the brief was we had to do an emerging house for catastrophic situations, And of course, I was like, what? Okay, what emerging house in Barcelona for? Okay, so then I said, okay, we just do something that it's like a theoretical exercise of what a house means, no? And this is a simple gesture of a house. It means a temporary house. It's something that, in case of an emergency, what you want to do is just wrap yourself around something that enclose yourself in some walls and then put a roof. No, you don't need nothing else. A house, the essence of a house, of a home, could be just that, And that's this idea of a spiral, something that goes within itself, and because it grows in height, then it creates a roof. That was very nice when we had to build it in one-to-one with the students. It was a small object, but it was interesting. We were to this warehouse with these carpenters exploring. We had to do a preview, and then finally it was built like that. We were forced to work with this white kind of plastic. No? It was one of the part of the briefs. And at the end it was kind of, we didn't know in which catastrophe would be set, but it was an interesting project. Another thing in 2010, that's at the end of 2010, me and 7 other architects, the Council of Barcelona, asked us to study the possible transformation of this avenue in Barcelona. This is quite a special and characteristic avenue. You said it's like the Broadway of Barcelona, which it has been neglected for so long, and it was in need of a restoration. It was a moment where we were quite, the council was approaching young architects to gather ideas, and the avenue, it's here. If you don't know, that's the old town center of Barcelona. This is the Montjuïc, like a mountain that defines a boundary. And the parallel is this line here in between these two realms. It's also a very, not only because of the direction of the street, but also because it's the frontier, the limit between different kinds of neighborhoods. So it's somehow a space that it's nobody's space, but at the same time it's everybody's. No? So it has this double condition of being something that separates and unites at the same time. It's also a special point in Barcelona in terms of the grid. As you can see, it's the only moment where this geometrical grid from Cerdà, that maybe you know that Barcelona is well known, that it's the extension of the city in the 19th century. It's the only moment where these islands are cut in 45 degrees. So that generates a very special landscape of the city. The first thing we had to do, it was what it means to transform a street. It means just to change the pavement, or just to put new street lamps. For us, it was more important. The transformation of this avenue had to be more wider, no? Because it was affecting more than the actual section of the street. So we defined this kind of it's not random, but this wider area of intervention, which we call the parallel district. No, with something that doesn't exist now, and that it would have their own rules, and it allowed us, this drawing here, this is drawings I made, this drawing, it just shows the density. These are if you take the AutoCAD drawing from the council and you just put the numbers of the blocks, and you just leave the numbers, and you zoom out, that's what you get. You can see that this area is a more dense neighborhood, and then at the edges, suddenly there is no housing because the tissue is different. No? So it's a very nice way of, just by a simple click on the computer, to give you a strange scan in terms of density of the area. And there on top you can see the shapes of the more morphological approach to the drawing. Because we were 8 people, we had to do 4 teams of 2 in order to divide the street in 4 areas. My team, me and this other guy, Jordi, we had to work in the second area, which it was exactly the area where the most theaters were, no? The most emblematic area. One of the drawings I did, it was what happens, for example, to draw all the ground floors of the theaters in this drawing, also enlarging until this is another theater that was outside, a bit outside of our area. This drawing, it's a kind of a representation of a reality of what happens if all the theaters had something and they were open to the street, and the street was cut and people could go around like a public space. No, it just shows a reality that it's now it's not. This street now, it's very wide, there is a lot of cars, and it's very difficult to cross. It's very traffic orientated. But in the other hand, it has all the potentiality to be a very civic, a very leisure and a very open public space, the street itself, that would help the different neighborhoods to kind of gather together and to be a meeting place instead of a frontier. No? So I kind of create certain drawings to express and to show that. No? So the whole approach to the design project was to look at the street in the other way, instead of longitudinal, looking at in transversal, no? To see these kind of relations, no? To understand that the street is a sequence of transversal realities that are and relationships that are happening there, no? Because that's what we wanted to do. And then different zooms. You can, maybe it's not very clear, but this in red, it's all the small interventions. There was interventions that they were bigger transformations, and other ones that they were just simple studies about where these objects that normally are in the streets, like the bus stop or where you buy the newspapers, or every artifact that is in the street could be relocated, and then some new small points of activity, these temporary artifacts could be relocated in order to turn this place into a dining room area, somehow a sitting room area from the neighborhood, instead that there's a place for the cars. These are just different drawings. That was a document. We were 4 people working during 8 people working during 3 months. We got paid 9,000 euros each of us, and the document had more than 200 drawings. It was like, we presented and it was like that. This document went directly into a drawer of a politician, and nobody knows where it is anymore. That happens a lot in Spain. You do a lot of effort for nothing. Well, for yourself, let's say that. This is another drawing that I did. I like to work a lot with axonometrics, where you can visually see in red the different kind of interventions that kind of have the potentiality in this street. Another project, it was of course, another thing as in Spain, it's quite common, there is a lot of competitions, not anymore, but there was a lot of competitions, open competitions, where architects could present themselves and maybe they have their opportunity to build for the first time. This was a competition that happened in 2012, and they opened in Barcelona 16 sites to study how the city relates to this Collserola mountain, which is like a natural park. The city has these limits in the north from this natural park. This is a drawing of the city up there. It's very nice because it's in section. You can walk there and have a very amazing view of the city. So it's these territories that are now undefined. They are nobody's land. And the council wanted to, like they did in the 92, that they open up to the sea. Now they wanted to study to open up to the north, and I presented myself together with we did it with 4 students in the university. This is the first 2 panels we had to present. It was more like gather ideas and examples of your work in order for them to pick you, and for the second phase of the competition. I was totally not expecting to go through the first phase of the competition. I went through, strangely. They got me this because I had this door, they call it doors, this site. So my second phase, it was to develop a proposal for this site. And that was the final panels of, we had to present 2 A1s vertical. And that's what the drawings I did. This is the first panel, which it was a plan of the area, but with axonometric on top of it, where I redraw in detail all the small interventions that I propose. And on the right, it was like a story, like a comic story, where you could go from the top to down and in order and read how the different ways of transforming this site. And we won. It was very amazing. And we won. Of course, nothing happens after that, but it was nice. The proposal had like three main points. to this, to locate a number of architectural objects in intermediate scale. This somehow coming from parallel, I had this idea of these intermediate objects, like really some kind of interventions that are able to channel activity and transform a site with a very low budget, and then enlarge. The area had this monastery that could be enlarged and somehow reopened to the public, and also with new activities. And then I also had the idea of how to connect. It was a very long site, how to connect all these areas. So I thought, let's make a conduta, because the water is very important in that area, because the section was very stiff, so to turn the element of water as a connector for the whole thing, and this element, a bit like the Álvaro Cis project in Malagueira, it was the motive and at the same time the link of all the other interventions. This is just a zoom of several drawings that I did, from higher scale to detail, like to get a general idea. Like I told you, in Barcelona School, or at least myself, I like to work a lot. First, I really deal with the site and the conditions of the site, and I try to draw them. So we had to do the plan again, because we didn't have a drawing of the existing things. So we spent a lot of time drawing what was there in a lot of detail, and then to use this axonometry view to impose the proposal on the site. This is just several proposals of the possibility, the different sections of this element, this water connector element that can somehow frame all the views of the proposal. From this, I got the last two projects I have been doing. From the parallel process, we got separate commissions, each of us. And then I got this commission to study also it didn't happen. I did the studies, I got paid 6,000 euros, and that's it, it's in a drawer somewhere. But it was nice because it allowed me to have a closer look of the pavement. They say to me, you have to study a possibility of transformation of the pavement of the street. I was like, okay, where do I start? So I did a survey of all the pavement that exist in this avenue, and I realized that as you knew from before, it's somehow a collection of pavements, because every part of the town has different pavements, and they all go there and join in this street. So that for me, instead of being something wrong or something bad, it was an opportunity for design. And I thought you have to keep this character of different types of pavement, but then I took this, maybe if you don't know Barcelona, Barcelona has a special piece of pavement for most of the pedestrian areas, and it's kind of iconic, and it was made at the beginning of the last century, and it's this gray with different patterns. So I thought this is very iconic of Barcelona. Nobody pays attention anymore to this because it's everywhere, and I thought let's just use it as a calligraphy, like as a language. They just relocate. Instead of just putting the first one that it comes, let's pay attention to which type we are using, and to draw this kind of mattress in the floor, like, to make motifs, to treat the pavement like a jewelry with very low cost material, because this is a very low cost budget pavement piece. But the fact by changing the way you use it, by putting attention with these motifs, choosing carefully which piece goes everywhere, you could maybe this could be a new a way of doing the renovation. I also thought that was one way. The other way could be, let's introduce a new material, a new piece, also very poor material, but very somehow natural, which is just a brick of clay, and then make some special areas like the exits of the metro, or specific areas to have this like a platform in the floor. And another one, it was like incrustate some kind of jewelry, metal messages also in the floor. No? So very simple, 3 ideas using a very regular and vulgar material somehow, but thinking out how you put it. I did these drawings. I did a survey of all the whole pavement, very much in detail, like how the irregularities and the typologies, and then you just rechange the position of everything. Some images, they would look like that. That was also a very fast project. Like they give you always 3 months to do that, the most. So you don't really have time to do something else. And the last one, and that's it. And then you can ask me whatever. It's this as a reward for the winning competition of the doors. You got this. It's like, okay, we give you 6,000 euros again to do a micro urbanization that it's a temporary intervention in this small part of public space where you did your proposal before. That's what I got. I got this lot that they are now, it's a neglected area. They are using it for car parking, and they said, okay, you have to put a fence because there are going to be some gardens coming on, and then you have to put some seating areas on one side, and that's it. I was like, okay, do you need me for that? But are you sure that you need to do this? Because this was a 50,000 intervention, so it's very small money for a public restoration, public urbanization. So you were not able to do a lot. So I tried to focus on at least that somehow I can use, for example, a very cheap material for a fence, but I can design and I can think about the shape that it takes and how this transforms the space around it. So this is a drawing where you can see the existing reality. These are the cars, these rectangles are the cars that they park now. The site was also it had a slope, it was a bit difficult in terms of topography. And what I did, it was just to open up, to just incorporate this new boundary, this new wall that had to define this interior area. And in doing this, understanding that this was like the last fence of this monastery area somehow, and it was a transparent fence, it was lighter with provisional, but it had the same meaning and the same significance that the ones that they are made by stone. And then the 2 red things are just these 2 seating areas that they were made by just brick, plain brick, and they were all the same, just different length. But and the rest just to locate certain trees on the right, and that's it. So this was the 3 main interventions. Is like to keep somehow the garden atmosphere that was already there, to introduce a new material for the seating area, and to understand that the fence it's some kind of aesthetic element that can be made by cheap materials, but it can have a thoughtful shape. And that's it. Just a bit more drawing where you can see. Also, that fence would locate. Then it would be like a green fence, where vegetables would grow and plants. And that's just a bit of a drawing of how these kind of platforms, like these 2 areas of seating, that they were like objects that, like somehow like ruins that were there previously. The idea of building something that could be easily part of the site, like something that you discover on the site, that has belonged there for always. And that's it. That's my final slide. Thank you.
Can someone bring the lights up? And maybe while people are formulating their questions, because I'm sure there are going to be lots of questions coming, I just want to say that in many ways this was maybe the perfect example of what an unconventional practitioner might look like, right? I mean, I think we've had some wonderful lectures up to this point in the year, but you represent someone who's operating in so many different ways, trying on the one hand to survive in a sort of Maslow's sense, right? But also finding different forms of practice, different forms of inquiry, be it in a conventional office where you were working and making buildings, right? Be it in a mode of teaching, mode of writing, research, exhibitions. I mean, this was kind of an amazing spectrum. You're kind of like the smart Spanish version of what I'm trying to achieve myself. So really enjoyed it.
I hope you get more money for it.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. It seems to fly away. It goes into a politician's desk
Okay.
and never to be seen again.
It's the same everywhere, I think.
So I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions, comments? That's such wonderful work.
So I was curious, in parallel with the crisis, there is another theme, kind of political, that political tendency for independence of Catalonia. So I want to know, what is your experience with like how architecture follows that? Do they try to establish more of their local identity? Is it reinforced with crisis, or they now with crisis try to like more blend and have a Spanish identity? How that kind of reflects the architecture?
You can come to the next lecture, but no. But in my opinion, of course, the fact that Catalonia is, or there is a big movement of trying to be independent from the rest of Spain. This politically, it always forces certain people to position themselves. Especially architects have traditionally been close to power. We cannot deny that. I mean, so now you can see, of course, some people that are closer to power, that they are trying to make an effort to maybe pretend to be more Catalan than ever. But for me, that's just a surface. I mean, architecture, there is a tradition in Catalonia, that, but it's not a tradition that it's now changing in order to segregate itself from Spain. It's just a tradition that comes, it's a flow, you know, it just comes and will continue. But I don't think it's affecting directly the way we build or the way we... Of course, for political reasons, maybe there is less investment, or there is more investment in certain projects that are related to Catalan culture, temporary installations that architects have to deal in order to express or celebrate this Catalan identity. But generally speaking, I don't think, I mean, that we can be defined, architecture can be defined by the nationality. It's more a relationship with a specific territory, specific territorial conditions that have their homologues in other parts of Spain. And we share maybe a tradition because of the school. The School of Barcelona has maybe a different way of operating and teaching than Madrid, for example, and that generates different sensitivities along their students that then become architects, and then so. But I think it's just more close to the territorial conditions than political. But it's inevitable. You can never separate. There is always going to be architects that are working for politics, and but I don't think in terms of a style you can recognize that much. I would like to think that it's not. That we are above all good practitioners, and we try to deal with existing conditions. It's true that now, more than the political scene, for me, it's more the critical economical scene, which is it goes alongside. I mean, one thing feeds the other. It's it's true that now architects do a lot more for less, and that we take advantage of every moment and every situation to have a window for design, and creativity is there, and we use it when we can. I don't know if I answer your question, but.
Other questions or comments?
While someone's formulating one, I just want to reinforce what just said, and what you actually just used that phrase. That this is the present reality, and it's actually everywhere. And that yes, there is going to be no conventional practice. Maybe for a few who will go directly, the folks I see walking up to 14th Street, and I go, TDS, Berkenswil, LAS, our ex-student. But for most of us, it is going to be this terrain where you think a whole suite of unconventional practices. wonderfully was that you took it from the macroeconomic conditions of the crisis to the personal subjectivities that keep one going. And in that space, to continually scan, as you said, to find the window for design in any project or anything that you take on. And I think that's the kind of brilliance that is showing up in Latin America, in Europe, in many, many ways, in parts of America as well. But we tend to, since we sit within institutions like this, not to see those kinds of realities that exist. And to your question about the Catalan identity, it gave her an impossible task for the second lecture, an overview to Catalan architecture, which is framed through how Catalan architects and the Catalan equivalent of the AIA have framed Catalan architecture for presentation as the big exposition of nationalism, which is the Venice. So make sure you come to that as a big question.
Any other final questions or comments? I do have just one question. I found it fascinating. You said there's not a culture of demolition in Spain.
No.
Could you give me we do have to transition to the other venue, but could you just explain that? I found it really fascinating. I'm not saying for or against it. It's just kind of fascinating.
As you know, there is a culture of ownership, which is also very different from other countries, at least in Europe. So Spanish people like to own their own things, their own properties, and their
Very
own.
American.
Maybe also here, but in Europe it's not that common. And then I don't know why it's very difficult to demolish something there. I know in other countries like Holland, some buildings are already prepared that every 30 years they demolish them and they rebuild them, and that's it. There is nobody suffers from that. In Spain, I don't see it. I don't see it. It's like there is maybe an attachment of the, but then on the other hand, sometimes they demolish very precious things. So it's a weird, but in generally speaking, and I think in relation to these ghost urbanizations now, it should be a debate about demolishing yes, demolishing no, or what are we waiting for? And I can imagine that things like I don't know, like happen, or we see in the news, or we study like Detroit. In certain areas to demolish, it can be dangerous because it's like a way of slowly killing certain what was there. But at the same time, it allows to the land to reconquer their space. Or it's also, but I think economically speaking, it's difficult because can you reverse a land that it's urban to rural? Because for us, at least there, the regulation doesn't allow you to build in rural land, but it does in urban. So during the wealthy years, a lot of rural land was converted into urban land, so developers could build there. But that was a major, also a fatal strategy in certain landscapes that they were naturally very rich. So there is a possibility of regaining these spaces. I would think so. But I can imagine that it's a speculation thing, that maybe they would prefer to have these ruins there for 15 years before, instead of demolishing and allow nature to take it back.
Well, the first act of creativity is destruction, right?
Yeah, I think we should.
Rich territory there.
Some ones they should really turn down.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome.